Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are across this great wide world of ours. No, I haven't made a video in a while. And with everything going on with attending some online classes and a few other odds and ends things going on, and then with the election, I, uh, I hadn't got a video concerning the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or BIA. And one of the reasons I hadn't, just like I said, I've been busy with midterms and finals, and and then I got a cold. So, needless to say, I'm hopefully this week start getting back into the routine of things this week. But one of the things I want to talk about is, and there's a lot been in the news about what can be administrative wise cut, and I have been talking about this. Excuse me, but my throat's dry. But I have been talking about this, and one area, like I said, is when we talked about this, is the BIA needs to be defunded. And one area that I see is that can have a great impact is the administrative aspect of defunding Washington D.C. 12 regional offices, condensing it down to moving the office of the BIA out of Washington D.C., move it somewhere like uh, Tulsa, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Austin, Texas, Oklahoma City, somewhere more into it, because a lot of majority of the tribes exist west of the Mississippi, and for that reason, it would behoove that we have the contention that I've said is 4 regional offices: one in the east, which is east of the Mississippi; one in the Great Plains, northwest, southwest, and then southern plain area, which would give you really one northwest, southwest, and then if you talk about that, maybe 4 or 5, you could probably get away with 4, which would be 3 in west of the Mississippi and then 1 in the east. And namely because there really isn't other than tribes located in the southeast, which are down there, that would have an impact. So my goal here is just to say that would be in the administrative cost. And this would be number one. It would be one thing you would get as instant results, and number two, you would get to self autonomy that would have formed where the self autonomy or the self empowerment comes from the tribes themselves. And it's always been my contention that the the power exists within the individual tribes and not necessarily in the regional offices. And this is one thing that can have a great impact on the reservations on a whole, and be able to create some more. And there's a couple other agencies that I think could use some company like the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, and the issues on dams and the other issues on water reserves. That's another area of contention, and I think to look at. And and then over my readings, I've said, and it's a contention that I talked to somebody over the last couple of days as well, is that just because someone from the West may have a better handle on this doesn't necessarily mean the case. And my contention is, even though currently I'm in Ohio, I did live for a while and go to school in southern Arizona. The contention for me is, if you see it from a different angle or a different outset, and when you don't have a necessarily an interest in what goes on, you can be more biased. I think that part of the rationale that comes out of this is there's bias that contends because normally a lot of people from uh, come from the West that are interior secretaries, and this has been a growing trend in the 20th century. But my contention is, and I argue, as well as James R. Garfield, was actually from Ohio because he was the eldest son of James A. Garfield, and he was from the East. But he took a different perspective of looking at these things in a different light. And necessarily, that may be a good example to do is to see it in a different light, in a different aspect. And he was Interior Secretary under Teddy Roosevelt, or Theodore Roosevelt, and was able to create the Antiquities Act and a few other things. Another one is Gifford Pinchot, kind of Department of Agriculture. And at this time, granted, there were interests up in Northeast part of the United States, but a lot of interest on agriculture, Department of Agriculture, tend to be west of the Mississippi. And there again, there you get that contention of a different perspective from an Eastern perspective. And I think we've lost focus on that through Congress. Well, if it's some interest Interior Department, it's got to be something out of the West, but not necessarily because there that interest may, there may be some underlying, I wouldn't say contempt, but necessarily some type of issues of somebody might owe some quid pro quo this for that type of thing. So I think the best thing to do would be to have an interest in it from a different perspective or from a biased perspective, and that would help because I've reached out to a couple of people that wants to change some things within the government, and that's one contention that I still have. Is you want to be able to have an impact right off the bat, and then to me, it's a no-brainer. Number one, you're taking that responsibility, turning it over to the individual tribes, and then number two, you're taking that power out of the federal government, and I believe the federal government doesn't need all the power concerning the reservations to turn that. And number three, I'm a big contention with these issues of reservations. Any area that needs to be, these should be turned over to the individual states, not necessarily the federal government too. So, case in point, say you have the Navajo, which kind of butts parts of New Mexico, Arizona, parts of southern Utah, where the majority, what I would call 4/5 of that tribal exist. That's where the issue of where that sovereignty would be, and not necessarily that would be given over to the states. Now, if a state is that interested, then you would say, okay, well then you're entitled to the 1/5 of whatever comes down with it, because in that way, the state wants to argue that point. I think it's kind of a mute point because really you're not going to really move that group off the reservation. But then another contingent I've said before, if they don't have clean running water, which has always been a contingent by me, and with the American Southwest, maybe our plan or our philosophy concerning water quality needs to be seriously looked at and maybe condense Native Americans within a different region, especially when we get into the areas of the Colorado and Colorado River or Rio Grande, where most of that water is already allotted. So if you go in there and the tribe tries to allot more water, chances are they're not going to get that approved. And then if it went through the federal government, and there again, I think that needs to be more turned over to the states, other than water quality needs to keep it within the federal government, which is under the Clean Water Act of 1972, and with the EPA. And I know there's some contentions about people saying, well, we need to get rid of the EPA, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be a case to improve the quality of water, because it's just not. So anyway, these are some food for thought. I'll try to get another video out later out early next week. Anyway, please like and subscribe on the bottom there. Please share this information with other Native Americans trying to get the information out there. Anyway, hope to talk to you soon. Also, remember, I do have books on self-published on Amazon. You look under B. Thomas Miller and also Boyd Thomas Miller. The latest one is Water Quality on the Reservation, which is Boyd Thomas Miller. Anyway, folks, I'll talk to you real soon and have a great day. Bye.